Hey guys, Modsy here. Today I'm doing a sort of much needed sort of unboxing of bits and pieces that I've got over the last few months. I don't do these very regularly because I don't get stuff on a like a weekly or fortnightly basis. Some stuff sort of gets here towards the end of each month, and some stuff is really not sort of worth doing a whole video about if it's just one or two little things. But I guess to start with today, we're doing a whole heap of different stuff. It's not just video cards; it's a whole heap of bunch of stuff. What I'm gonna do to start with is talk about these few things just here. So I recently I bought a water block off of eBay very recently for my GTX Titan that's in my main system, and I was basically doing a complete water cooling overhaul of my main system, and I will chuck up some footage somewhere around here. Just some B-roll and a bit of that of what it looks like at the moment. But essentially we had a really nasty heat wave over here in Melbourne sort of over the last week or so, and this stuff sort of turned up right in the middle of that, and part of the water cooling upgrade to my main PC was to stop, because like to stop all the heat that thing sort of chucks out into the room. So I didn't end up filming the process of putting the water cooling on or doing any of the upgrades to my PC because I was kind of very limited for time, but I wanted to show you some of the bits and pieces that I got. So I finally joined the RGB Master Race and finally went and picked up a set of RGB products, and I grabbed these really awesome looking Corsair LL series RGB fans. Now these two fans in particular are the ones that I'm replacing, putting these two in the front of my Corsair Air 540, because the original purple LED fans that I had in there, well, the purple LEDs were starting to die and they were really dull and they just weren't working anymore. So after looking around and trying to work out what I wanted, I ended up going with these because they seem to be just the best fan for what I wanted, and I really love the look at these RGB fans. Now I'm not someone that's going to be running these in rainbow mode. In fact, I'll actually have a bit of B-roll showing you what the configuration that I have these set up in to match the color theme of my case. Yeah, the other two fans that I picked up are two 120mm Vardar fans, and these were picked up because the two fans that I had inside the case on the top radiator, basically that were pushing air from inside the case against the top radiator and exhausting it out the top, the two fans that I had in there were also starting to die conveniently at the moment. So I ended up basically going and picking up two new white Vardar fans because, well, these fans are absolutely incredible for mounting on radiators. So I wanted to try them out, and so I picked a set of these up. And these are already in the case, which is why they like that. But I'll show you some B-roll of what these look like anyway. Alright, that aside, what is some of the other stuff that's picked up? Okay, so yeah, the water block for the Titan. So this is the cooler for my Titan. Sorry if that's not in focus. I'm going to try and get it in focus there for you. And essentially, yeah, so this was, I took these off yesterday, which is the time, so I'm filming this the day after I did my water cooling rebuild. And yeah, so this is basically what the heatsink looks like when you remove it off of a reference NVIDIA card. Yeah, so this is basically what the reference cooler looks like with all the bits and pieces, and I've basically put the plastic back over the top of these pads here just to preserve them in case I want to put the stock cooler, because these pads are a very specific size and I don't know if you can rebuy ones exactly the same, and these are still in really good condition anyway. They're a little bit dusty, but they actually are in still good condition, so that's why I've kept them. And I haven't actually cleaned this out. It's still got quite a bit of dust and stuff on it, but yeah, so that's what the cooler looks like. So I'll set that aside. Okay, so one of my upcoming projects that I'm working on this year is building a really like a really awesome Windows 98 retro machine, and to do that I needed to get some more IDE and floppy cables. Now I picked these up off of eBay, so as you can see these are Asus branded cables, and these were like $10 for the set of these. These are brand new, by the way. I've actually already used them in a build, which is why they're looking a little bit bent and crinkled in places, because I've actually already used them. But I mean, these have that brand new, fresh out of the bag smell on them still, which is really awesome. But I got this as a bundle all together. So there's the two IDE cables and the one floppy cable. So they're going in my Windows 98 build. But I also picked up this little doodad here. This is also a floppy cable, but this is one by a company called New Link. Never heard of it. But it is a really, really long, as you can probably see by the size of this thing, it is a really, really long floppy cable. I got this for my Windows XP machine, which I'm going to be adding a floppy drive into, and that case is really, really big. So I needed one that had quite a lot of length to it so I can actually do the proper cable management that I wanted to. So that's why I picked up this really, really, really long one. And I'm actually thinking about putting 2 floppy drives in that system. So I actually wanted to get one that had 2 ends to it, so I can actually run 2 floppy ports, 2 floppy drives, sorry. So, oh my god, my camera's having a friggin' heart attack again. I apologize. There we go. Yeah, so that's that. On to a game. So, part of my collecting, I guess you can say, that I'm trying to do with the bits and pieces that I have around here is I'm trying to actually put together some of my favorite games as well, and one of those is this one. So this is the one of my favorite, like what I call the classic Need for Speed games. So that's number 1 through to 6 before Underground came out, and so I'm trying to find the big box basically versions of all my favorite games to build, like have that collection, because I used to have the big boxes, but I ended up getting rid of them through moving all the time. The boxes got damaged, and I always wanted to go back and just grab them again, because the boxes just had some really cool artwork on them, and they actually had, I mean, this is an Australian car. If you guys aren't familiar with our cars over here in Australia, yeah, like this featured so many cool Australian cars, and this here, if you're not familiar with what this car is here, this is the, I believe this is the VT model, Holden Commodore V8 supercar that was in our V8 supercar national racing that we have. It's like our biggest, one of our biggest national races that we have, like competition wise. And this particular one is the Holden from the actual HRT, which is the Holden Racing Team, like Holden's own team, I guess you can say, like the Mercedes team or the Ferrari team for Formula 1, Holden has their own team, which is obviously the maker of this car that's in the sport. And so this is their car from, I can't remember the exact year, but I do know the model of this car was the VT from memory, or it could be, I could be getting it wrong, but I just remember from the shape of the lights and the shape of the car, but this is the VT model. And then you have the XR8 Falcon here on the back. So, yeah. And it can go along with my copy of Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 3, which I've got big box version, which, wink, there we go, which I have, the 2 of these in big box form. And of course, there was different versions of this for across the world. This one has the 2 Aussie cars on the front of it, so the Ford Falcon, the GT Falcon, and the HSV, which is Holden Special Vehicle, if you're not sure what HSV stands for. Holden's, yeah, so this is a VT, I know that much, which is very similar. It's the same model of car. That's the front, that's the back of it there. I'm a Ford guy rather than a Holden guy, but to be honest, around this era, they both looked really, really awesome. But when I go to a Bathurst, for example, I'm a Ford guy, not a Holden guy. So yeah, so I finally got that. Now I'm still trying to get the other versions of these, the other ones of these for the set, so I can actually have the full 6 original Need for Speeds in big box form as well. But the seller that I get these from, I'm actually getting them from all the one guy on eBay, and I'm not going to give him away because he has very limited stuff. But I mean, this is the dual case that actually came with the high stakes game, and the level of care that this guy puts into keeping these in good condition. This thing basically has not got a single scratch or anything on it. This thing is in like pristine condition, which is just, you know, it's crazy. I don't think this is the original case for this though, because, well, let me just grab. Okay, so this is the case for this is the one that come out of the other box that I've got there. Now, I don't know if you can see, there's one difference. If I zoom in here and not drop these, There we go. And that is, you see that there in the middle? Where are we? That is ECA, if I can kind of read that properly. It's the little square, circle, triangle symbol, which is the Electronic Arts symbol, which you can also see, well, on the back here. They actually had their cases, their jewel cases, branded for all of the original ones, and this one doesn't have that. So I'm actually thinking that this may not be the original jewel case for this. But either way, I mean, these things are in practically mint condition, which is just crazy. I guess video cards, actually first I'm going to talk about a CPU that I just recently got. So this right here is one that I got, and I've already posted a few pictures and stuff of it on Facebook. And well, this is the Russian CPU, the Soviet CPU, basically, that's got a really cool history behind it. And I'm not going to talk about a little bit too much about that at the moment, because I'm actually in the middle of scripting the video for this CPU. But let's just say this is a really special CPU that I got in early January, and this thing's got a lot of gaming pedigree behind it, which is really cool, and I can't wait to talk to you guys about it and go into a bit of detail about this CPU, which is really, really cool. So I'll save that one for another video. Alright, on to video cards, and we have this one here. This is actually a gift from a very good friend of mine. In fact, he's going to be the best man at my wedding coming up this year. Jack, so I have to say a big thank you to you. This is actually his very own card that he used to play Battlefield 2 on back in the early 2000s. This, if you're not familiar with what this card is, let me just make sure this thing's in focus. There we go. This is a ATI Radeon X700 Pro, which is really, really, really nice. This is in really good condition too, like this back thermal pad here. A lot of these get damaged from sitting in boxes and things like that, like being out and loose. And this is basically just to protect the PCI Express to AGP bridging chip, which is on the back here. So when you're buying cards that have these bridging chips, they'll always be on the back, some of them. And these pads get very easily damaged because it's basically just a very soft, flimsy thermal pad. But so this is Jack's card, and I was actually looking for a X700 Pro, an AGP one specifically, and I was going to be getting a Sapphire one until Jack told me about this one that he's got that he used to play Battlefield 2 with. And as you guys may or may not know, I actually like collecting the ATI cards that have Ruby on the decal, because there was a lot of cool different artwork based around some of the demos that ATI did, the tech demos and things like that. So I'm trying to get a good sort of mix and collection of all the different artwork on video cards that have Ruby on it. So that's why I kind of said this was really, really awesome to add to the collection. So I have to say a big shout out to Jack and say thanks for this, because this is a really cool little card, and I've actually already chucked it in, done a bit of testing and stuff with it, and it still runs really, really well, which is really cool. And it does still play Battlefield 2, which is really cool. So yeah, thanks Jack for that one. Another cool video card. Now this is actually one that turned up in late December, but I only had this as like the one thing that I got in late December, so it wasn't really enough time to do a dedicated video on it. I'm just going to make sure this is actually in focus for you guys. You guys might not be aware of what this cool little video card is. It's by Medion, or however you pronounce that. This is a cool little card. So it is a PCI Express card. It's got this really funky metal cooler on it, which is actually quite a thick cooler too. So it's a little bit more than the single slot. As you can see here, it's a bit thicker. But this card is a GeForce 666. Sorry, let me rephrase that. It is a GeForce 6 6700 XL. And you might be thinking, if you're familiar with the GeForce 6 series, that you might not have ever heard of this card before. Well, I'm not surprised, because Medion is the only company that made these, to my knowledge. There might be some others. But essentially, if you're not familiar with Medion, however you say it, I think they're owned by Audi, or they were sold through Audi supermarkets in Europe and some other places. This was a card that was in a pre-built system, essentially. So that's why it's sort of a custom PCB and custom thing. But basically the chip that's underneath this is actually just a 6600 GT. It's identical, same specs, same power, same everything. It's a 6600 GT. Same clock speeds, everything. Except that it's labeled as a 6700 XL. With a really nice cooler on it, I must say. This is a really cool cooler. It's not very loud. It's got a little bit of a weird whine to it. But I wanted to pick this up because it's a very unique card, and I was looking to get a 6600 GT PCI Express and AGP variant anyway. And I kind of thought that this card would kill two birds with one stone, being that it is technically a 6600 GT, but it's also not, because it's a 6700 XL, which I kind of thought would be a cool thing to do a video on. But you might notice this little port that's up here as well. And in the pre-built system that this came in, this actually had another plug on it with a little adapter dongle almost that was mounted into the case that gave you component video out. So you know your RCA plugs that has green, blue, and red, and S video. This port here plugs into a little dongle that provides you with that component video out. Or it could be in, I might be mistaken. I haven't done a huge amount of research on this, but it basically gives you a little adapter to extend the in and out ports of this video card. Because as you notice, it only has the two ports on the back of the VGA and DVI. Even though there is actually a little thing there for S video and AV on the back there, which is really cool. So I'm going to be doing a dedicated video on this in the future when I actually reach the point where I want to do the 6600 GT video. And this card will actually feature in that video alongside my AGP 6600 GT as well. So that'll come sometime in the future. Not too far away, but this is a really cool little video card anyway. And I love the cooler on this. It actually has a heat pipe inside of it. I don't know if you can see. There's like a copper heat pipe that like snakes its way through here as well. But yeah, on to the next card. Okay, so the next video card that I have is actually one that I'm using to put into my retro system to replace my 6800 Ultra. So at the moment, if you guys are familiar with my retro specs, I've been using this video card here, my 6800 Ultra Extreme, in my main daily driver retro machine. However, I'm not wanting to keep, this thing has just been sucking a bit of dust, and I don't want to keep using this card, given it's sort of kind of one of my more favorable cards that I want for my collection. I don't want to risk damaging this and breaking it or scratching the shroud or anything, because this thing was basically mint condition when I bought it, and it's now got a little bit of dust in it, and I'm just kind of very fearful because I have had one of these in the past when I originally bought one and it died on me, and I'm kind of a bit fearful of actually this one dying, so I want to take it out of my daily driver retro machine and put in this other card. So this is this thing here. This is a GeForce 7800 GS by BFG Tech, if you're familiar with them. This is actually quite a common card you can find on eBay for these days, and it's a very popular card because of how powerful it is for like a Windows XP DirectX 9 era, like early 2000s retro machine. And this one actually just arrived today, and in fact this is the video card that I'm going to be doing a restoration video on very next. In fact, that video might actually go live before this video, so we'll just have to see what order I put them out in. But yeah, this video card is going to go into my daily driver retro PC to replace my 6800 Ultra, because this is one that I don't quite have such an important history with, and I don't want to, if this thing dies in 3 or 4 years from use, I'm kind of okay with it. Whereas if my 6800 Ultra dies, I'm going to be a lot more sad. So that's why I'm shelving the 6800 Ultra and I'm putting this thing in my daily driver. But this is, as you can see, if you're not familiar with this card, is NVIDIA never made an AGP version of the 7800 series at all. I think there's some board partners made the 7600 GT an AGP card, and then BFG Tech made a AGP version of the 78 series. And I believe there's several different models of this. So there's the GS, there's a GT, and I believe they also made a 7900 GS, 7900 GT, and a 7950 GT AGP variant as well. BFG Tech was one of the companies that did actually go all out and keep supporting AGP, which was really, really nice. But yeah, this card I'm about to do a full restoration video after I finished filming this, because this thing's quite dusty and it's got a really unique PCB layout, and I kind of thought it'd be a fun little video card, because also being how popular this card is for retro PCs, you guys might be a bit intimidated to pull this thing apart at all, or you're not sort of sure on how to clean them if you get one yourself. So I kind of thought it'd be a cool little video to do and put together a little restoration video. So if you haven't seen that video just yet and you do have one of these, or you're looking at buying one of these, go check that video out. If you end up getting one and you want to know how to pull it apart and clean it up and put it back together again. So yeah, really cool video card. Oh, and so by the way, these actually come on eBay for around, at the moment they're a little bit expensive, but I picked this one up for around $35 Australian, because it was also local here in the same state that I live in Australia, and it was on auction, not a buyout, and I managed to be the only bidder that actually got it, which is quite surprising, because these things can go up for upwards of anywhere like around, give or take, $100 Australian sometimes. So yeah, and in terms of the performance of this thing as well, it's roughly give or take similar performance to a 6800 Ultra. I believe in some games it's a little bit slower, in some games it's a little bit faster. And this is 256 meg as well, same as the 6800 Ultra. So yeah. So this is a really funky looking box. Look at this thing. This thing is hilarious. Like just the graphics on this make it look like absolutely year 2000 level like graphics. This is a very generic looking thing, but this company is called Eagle. I'm not very familiar with this company. It very clearly has an eagle on the box here. It doesn't tell you at all what is inside of it. And when you turn it over, there is just a lot of different video cards here on the back. And let me just zoom in for you guys. Whoop, there we go. Let me make sure that's actually in focus. There we go. So there is a lot of different Eagle cards and then RAM sizes on this. And from what I can tell you, I don't know about the blade, I'm not sure what the blade is, but the T model cards are Trident cards. The S model cards are SIS or CIS cards. I'm not sure about the I. Oh, there goes one of our doors. We have more CIS cards here. Then we have the NVIDIA cards. We've got a Vanta. Then we have the NVIDIA cards, and we have the Vantra, TNT2, TNT, and then the Riva 128. Then over here we have the Promedia 2. I'm not sure what the Psi 2000 and Psi 3000 are. I'm not quite sure what they are. I'm not too sure what the AL one is either. And I'm also not too sure what the R1 is. But I do know that then you have the different RAM sizes. Now obviously this box is marked the T9750 with 4 meg of RAM. And as you can see, it also says PCI, local bus, and AGP. Which still doesn't really tell you exactly which version of this card it is, because it has both on there. Now this card was basically very, very dirt cheap, and let me just zoom back out for you guys, and we're going to open this up and see what is actually inside of this. So apologies if I cut there, guys. My phone rang and it was a bit of an important call, so I had to take it. So inside of this box, this really lovely looking weirdo box, I guess, we have not what was actually on the box itself. We actually have, let me look here. This is an S3 Verge /GX on board. Not sure why it says on board. Essentially, this is an S3 Verge by Jayton, of all people. And I believe this should be, if I'm familiar with this should be 2 meg of RAM, which is definitely not the 4 meg that was written on the box here. I do know that I was under the impression that this was a Trident. However, the seller didn't know himself. They weren't aware of what was inside of it, so it was kind of a bit of a mystery box but it was, as I mentioned, very, very cheap. So I was kind of wanting to go the gamble, but I do know that the guy said that it was practically brand new, never used, and he tested it and said that it worked in his 98 machine. So I was kind of willing to sort of gamble and see what it was all about. Alright, the last thing that I actually arrived, now I've actually already opened this because I wanted to confirm that it was actually what I bought, and I needed to just sort of make sure that it, by the time that because I've actually had this for a little bit now, and I didn't want to leave positive feedback on the eBay listing if this turned out to not be what it was. So that's why I actually opened this up. So this is, and it also comes with screws here, but this is another sound card that I got for my Sound Blaster and sound card collection. This is one in particular that I'm planning to put in my Windows 98 PC. It actually came with a bag of little screws as well. 2 screws, in fact. I'm not sure why it came with 2. Maybe a spare. But this is, as you can probably see, a Creative Sound Blaster Live video card. It is the model CT4620. Nice gold connections on the back here, with a nice game port as well, and MIDI port, which is cool. This is the Sound Blaster Live 4.1. Which I wasn't too sure actually existed or was a thing, but apparently the seller assured me that in fact this is actually an official name, I guess, for it, the Sound Blaster Live 4.1. But yeah, this is one of the original creative cards. For example, what I'm talking about is I have this card here, which is a Sound Blaster Live 5.1. Model SB0100, but this is a OEM card from either Dell or Compaq or something like that. It's very common to find on eBay's dirt cheap these days, in very, very good condition. But essentially this card has a lot of problems with the official drivers from Creative, and when I tried to install this card on my Windows 98 PC, the drivers just didn't recognize what it was, so I had to go digging around the internet and get custom drivers for it, and those drivers didn't work with half the games I wanted to play. So this is getting shelved into my collection. I may end up even selling it one day, I'm not too sure. But kind of what really sets this thing off is the fact that it has the original Sound Blaster Live 5.1 chip on it from 1998, but clearly this card's marked 2001. And it is in such brand new condition as well. You can tell this thing's only been in one system in its life until I got it. And I do know that the model number is actually one of the ones that was an OEM marked card. So that's why I got this one. As you can tell, it's got one less connection on the side. It's got nice gold connections. This back panel is a little bit rough. That can just do with a little bit of cleaning. I'll clean it up at a later date. Get it nice and shiny again. It's got a little bit of dust on it. But yeah, this is going to be a perfect card for my Windows 98 PC. Yeah, so that's the final card. So thank you very much for watching the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in another one. Bye for now.